Hey friend, it's time for us to finally meet. Hi, long time no see. What you're about to see is pretty disturbing. This game can mentally destabilize you to the point of needing some medication. It's the cruelest and most vile video game ever known to. I'm sorry, I'm just fucking with you. It's a video game. It can't hurt you. Why did you say that a video game can break you mentally? Where did you get that from? What's more is that it's an rpgmaker bullshit, so the immersion is at the absolute minimum, so nothing to be scared of. The fuck you gonna make with sprites like these? Add rape and gore to the mix to scare the living shit out of you? Why yes, the developer did exactly that. And he also wrote one hell of a fucking story. Let's begin. Black Souls, or as it's known in Japan, Kuro no Dowa Togama Hime, meaning Black Fairy Tales and the Five Demon Princesses, is a game that killed my sex drive and put me on antidepressants. Just kidding, I was already on them before I played it. But if I wasn't, I would definitely need some help from a qualified professional, that much is true. If you can't get the happy pills, your only two options are Smith and Wesson, because we've officially reached the bottom, Mariana Trench of video games. It has both best and worst storyline, gameplay, and porn known to man. I toned down the game so that the toddlers can watch it too. I feel like you're never too young to slip into depression or subscribing to my Patreon, just ask your parents. But no, the game asks you up front if you're into sex, so luckily most of us get to make the same incel answer as in real life. You can go, no, I'm not interested, thank you very much. What I'm interested in is completing my 300 hours journey in Kenshi and masturbating to feet-in characters from League of Legends. Simple as. You know, not a lot of info is floating around on this game, so I had to really get creative. Because there are no Kotaku reviews I could blatantly copy to pose as my own work. Nor are there any developer interviews that could provide me with some insight into the madman's sexual desires he so clearly put in this game. Crudely drawing all the characters with just one hand because of the handicap, you might call it. Souls-like, a word that prevented me from having sex with females so many times. I could go on for hours talking about the importance of this genre, but instead of that pointless 3-hour drivel that will bring me millions of views, I will instead review this small hentai game. Way more up my alleyway, and quite possibly yours. But, for real though, the game is Souls-like as much as an rpgmaker engine would allow it to be. You collect souls, you lit bonfires that you can teleport between, there's an Estus flask, you traverse through white fog to slay bosses and do other stuff generally attributed to Souls-like genre. I can actually recommend you play this game if you're a fan of Dark Souls. You'll find similar bleak and despair-laden tones here as well, provided of course if you can look past the pixel shit graphics. The kingdom is in ruins, people have gone mad, only maidens can help you on your quest of stopping this madness and this white fog that spread throughout the land. Sounds intriguing, doesn't it? Let's address the rapist in the room, elephant in the room. This game is full of non-consensual porn. Do you want to know what it's like feeling despair but also an erection? Your parents will be happy to pay all the medical bills as long as you're not gonna play this game anymore. Do you really want to see a dead man fucking a pocket-sized fairy with full penetration and inflation? Because this game has it. There's a lot of crudely drawn porn scenes with many heroines you encounter on your undead crusade. I can already tell you that Fear and Hunger feels like some pussy shit compared to the horrors I've endured in this game. But let's get back to Souls-like, the thing that stops us from procreating. Amusingly enough, it follows the tropes of Dark Souls 1 pretty closely, with you waking up in the undead asylum and getting your Estus flask almost immediately. Our main character is a silent protagonist too, but this time it goes even deeper than that. We've got a protagonist with a ludonarrative and thematic connection that's tied to the game itself, but I'll let you figure this one out for yourself. It's like Emperor Palpatine ejaculated into the universe itself to create Anakin Skywalker. And boy oh boy is there gonna be a lot of happy endings. Wouldn't have been a Japanese game if not for that. And, just like every Japanese person ever, the developers swore to corrupt and misinterpret and distort the Western fairy tales like those of Charles Perrault, the Brothers Grimm, Hans Christian Andersen, and Lewis Carroll. It's really obvious when you play this game. They are so disgustingly perverted that you can't even recognize such characters as Red Riding Hood, Hansel and Gretel, Snow White, Rapunzel, and others. It's like the West once did something so bad to Japanese they still can't forget it. Maybe that something even happened twice, I don't know. But it sure seems like Japanese people have a megaton of problems with the West. So what's the premise of this game? I'll tell you right now. The game begins with your soul being summoned into this world by Alice. Yes, the same Alice from Wonderland. She tells you that you are the main character of the story, and you have to overcome inhuman difficulties. You choose a class, and you are told that your identity is only temporary. That makes us understand that we are guests in this world. The sequel will tell us more about who we are and where we came from, but in this game it's not so important, and I don't want to spoil everything within the first title of the game. We still have a sequel to review, don't we? The game is chock full of content. Well, firstly, it has whopping 24 endings. 4 main ones, A, B, C, and D, all of which can be achieved in one save file, if you save at the right place that is, and also 10 good and 10 bad endings for each heroine that we want to marry, or the opposite, have a situation that is absolutely fucked up beyond any recognition. It took me about 10 hours to uncover all the meaningful endings, because just like in real life, I'm not at all that interested in sex scenes and getting married. Also, for completely liberated and emancipated people, Black Souls features New Game Plus, which, just like in any other featurettes from Souls-like genre, makes the game much more easy. But try to attain all the main endings all in one go. Why bother with New Game Plus, am I right? Allow me to read the official description of the game from the website. Once, in the age-long past, there was a country shrouded in dense fog, Lost Empire. The fog that turned humans into dreadful beasts, plunging the world into the abyss of despair. Ceaseless vortex of war. Warriors seeking fame and fortune. Harlots dreaming of castle balls. Sorry. Treasure hidden in the secret garden. Everyone gathered, and then there were none. You awaken there, just another insignificant undead. As the protagonist of this most cruel tale, what will you witness, and what will you manage to obtain? I'll pray for you to avoid the worst end. Cruel and tragic world of dark fairy tales. Alice, Little Red Riding Hood, Hansel and Gretel, as well as many other characters of famous tales, will appear on this stage of tragedy. Some as your allies, and some as enemies. 5 demonic princesses, insane princesses, each ruling her own land full of demon beasts. Their souls are black with faint, probably taint, right? Beautiful in appearance. In truth, they're abhorrent monsters. Yet, with negotiations, you may be able to bound yourself with them with a covenant. Yep, so here we are. That's the premise of the game. Aside from the English writing of this description, it does provide an insight into what we're about to play. You do remember me calling this game Souls-like, right? And this description proves that. We got vague mention of the kingdom we're in, some critical twist of fate, and our final boss enemies we need to vanquish to succeed. I could have easily played the opening cinematic of Dark Souls 1, and it would fit. That's how influential these series are to this little game. It's not just homage, it's heavy influence to the point of copyright infringement. Luckily, no one knows the true identity of the developer, so he's successfully hiding on the Kamikaze Islands, creating more vile and distorted stories we'll definitely review one day when this channel will need a viewership boost. Back to the game. According to the lore, the Lost Empire fell when the ruling princess Cinderella went mad, and the entire kingdom was flooded with fog, which sucked the souls out of people and turned them into demon beasts. In fact, this is why Joan of Arc from Orleans came to investigate what's up. She busts you out of totally not undead asylum, only to be incinerated by a dragon who's about to devour your ass as well. Funnily enough, you can kill this very same dragon with level 1 character if you know how to evade and parry the attacks successfully. But anyway, after this fateful encounter, you end up in the Holy Forest, the only location in this entire game that's unaffected by the mysterious fog. It is here you meet your first companion, Leaf, who accompanies you along your merry way and teaches you the art of summoning and sex. Yep, sex. Never mind. Now let's take a look-see to what other people are thinking about this game. Here we go. I finished this. I hated it before then, realized I didn't get it. Then I got angry and decided to get good, now I hate it even more. Once I actually put way more energy than I should have into this, I realized a lot of what expected of you is completely ridiculous and unreasonable. Especially when the game is a broken, clunky mess. Oh shit, those are reviews from Dark Souls, not Black Souls. My apologies. Now, finding reviews to this game, Black Souls, not Dark Souls, is a lot more difficult. You gotta understand, this game is pretty obscure. It's like finding an old dusty tome in a library that no one has masturbated to in centuries, and you'll be the first to take charge of conquering its pages. Grab this tome like your life depends on it, there's nothing quite like it in this world. Buckle up, buckaroo. Where we're going, we don't need mental health. You're about to receive a trauma, but you'll say please thank you, and say goodbye to all emotions you had. Things are about to get truly grim. Pun intended. There are 3 classes to choose from in this game. Classics of the genre: Warrior, Mage, and Thief. I chose the Thief because the bird told me that parry is OP skill, and it really is. You can even kill the first unkillable boss with it, if you know when to use which skill. You just put parry on and watch as the enemies step on the rake and kill themselves. This skill is pure cruise control, which will help you to cope with all the bullshit that the creator of this world throws at you. We'll talk about the creator and spoilers, bro. Don't get worked up. The combat is absolutely standard rpgmaker bullshit. Attack, skill, magic, block, item, escape, the works. If you played Final Fantasy back in the days when the female models had square breasts and the combat was turn-based, then you know what to expect from this game. However, I should note that the boss fights sometimes have riddles in them. For example, when you fight the Naked King from the fairy tale of the same name, I call myself that when no one sees me, you should summon one of your companions who will start laughing hysterically at his incredibly small cock, and his invulnerability spell will fall. Other bosses can simply be beaten to death, as, incidentally, are the women in this game. Important addition about enemies: monsters will respawn about 5 seconds after you kill them, so it's worth playing on shift and never stopping like Sonic on drugs. On one hand, it helps a lot with farming. On the other hand, if you want, for some reason, to slowly walk and absorb the atmosphere, then be prepared to kill endless streams of mobs. There is a skill in this game that you can get after a certain boss fight. It is called Hidden Body. It will allow you to freely pass through crowds of enemies in absolute invisibility. Super useful thing. It's like carrying a cheeseburger in your jacket pocket. May come in handy someday. Take it from me. In this game, you can find items that improve your stats. Yes, you can level up with souls at starting location, but as the game progresses, you'll collect color souls that increases one or other characteristic of your character. A super valuable thing, you can never have too many of them. This game is a great test for color blindness, by the way, as there are many basic colors that may not be what they really are if your parents were hiding this terrible diagnosis from you. Summons. A very important part of the game. Remember Dark Souls? Good. Now imagine that you can summon your allies not only during a boss fight, but also during any fight. Yup, just like that. The main thing is that you need to have enough mana, and then you can summon as many as 10 heroines and you can dogpile the motherfucker. The principle is as follows. You get souls and you can level yourself, but you can also level your partner so that they learn new skills and improve their characteristics. Finally, you get to learn that sharing is caring. The cornerstone of any good relationship, you see. There are several covenants in this game that you can join, even several at once. They will offer you a ring and, oh, that's about it. Just the ring. Not interesting at all. Someone, apparently, again, wanted to get inspired by Dark Souls and add covenants as an option, but it is, how I can put it this way, not very well thought out. Yes, the rings they give are strong, even very strong, but the covenant is just a couple of lines with bosses, who still need to be killed to get normal endings anyway. Equipment. You can forget about armor. There is none in this game. Just like our hypothetical girlfriends, it is non-existent. I don't know if it's good or bad, but you won't be able to play Fashion Souls, that's for sure. We have only 3 different sprites to choose from based on the class you picked, which will have to get used for the next 10 to 15 hours of gameplay. Weapons are rarefied in this game. This is no Elden Ring, where you can hug women and find 308 weapons. But you can upgrade your weapon in the forge, just like in that game I've already mentioned like 20 times in this review. Again, where does homage end and copyright infringement begin, I ask you? There's a lot of edgelord stuff in this game, like a lot. For example, our cute little hero has his own rape dungeon. I'm not even kidding. Every time I think of some fairy tale by the brothers Grimm or Charles Perrault and wonder how it could be perverted, when I find that very same fairy tale in this game, I throw my hands up in the air and scream, "Oh, come on! That's too much!" 3 Little Pigs? No, now they're masters of Nazi eugenics who want to create the perfect monster to kill Rapunzel. The Little Match Girl? Sure, only now her mother is a whore, and she deals drugs. The Naked Emperor? Yes, only now he's decreed that all women are sluts and he fucks them with his 6-foot-long dick that literally saws them in half. Do I need to continue, or have you figured it out already? Unlike Fear and Hunger, where the main strategy was to avoid combat, in this game it's on the contrary. It's strongly encouraged if you get into a fight. Scratch that, the game has an entire economy built on souls, which you can get for killing enemies. Like in Dark Souls, you can level up using souls, but here this mechanic is expanded, because here you can level up your companions as well, like I said. So it's completely possible to beat this game on level 1 if you're one of those weirdos who wears pot on their head and kills bosses on Twitch. Just level up Leaf and it will beat the game for you. Of course, this can turn into a major plot failure for you, but more on that in the spoilers. The game offers you complete freedom. You can kill whoever you want, go wherever you want, and even have sex with a goose. But freedom of action does not mean freedom from consequences. Remember that. Consequences are the leitmotif of the first Black Souls, and especially the sequel. You can save these lands, or plunge them into an uncontrolled chaos, killing and raping everything in your path. And now I ask the most important question of this entire review. Does all this murder and rape actually make any sense? Any sense at all? Does it open up some kind of ending? Additional plot lines? Something? Unfortunately, the answer to that question is a strong maybe. This game is truly a psychological thriller. It studies the human personality, your personality. It answers the question, given absolute freedom of choice, what would you rather do? Give in to carnal pleasures under the screams of your partner, or save the kingdom? It is morbid curiosity that can lead to unhealthy choices that cannot be remade later, like in Undertale. Although, it's just a game on the other hand, so no harm no foul, right? Right? Yeah, go on, just watch these scenes once, and that'll be it. If only everything was that simple. Also, the scenes are drawn in a way that a truly sick person would draw them. There is no grace, no beauty, no calmness or appeal to them. They are rough, raw, and sharp, like needles being stuck in your eyes. I do not know if this art style was chosen this way on purpose, or if the creator of the game molded the style from what he could draw. Honestly, I don't want to know, but these drawings, they are truly awful. This game also reminds me of Dark Souls 2 in that if you go through too many fog gates, you will miss out on characters' content because they will have finished their quest by the time you get to them. I hated it in that game, and I hate it in this game just as much. It's basically like being 32 years old adult and trying to feel young again by maintaining half that YouTube channel. We'll all be there, guys. What I'm saying is that you need to be extremely careful and revisit known locations in case there is additional content to them. By the way, have you called your mom lately, dear viewer? Maybe there is some new content waiting for you there too? But of course, the main common point between this game and Souls-like genre is that after death you are resurrected at a nearby bonfire. Sure, you lose accumulated souls, but at least now you have experience and understanding of what needs to be done. This gives us an opportunity to develop a strategy and plan of actions. This idea behind resurrection is that you can always take another crack at the situation. Just like in real life, no matter how many times you fall, it's all about how many times you get up and fuck shit up. All this time I was saying that this game is painfully similar to Dark Souls, right? But what is it that diverges from this series of games? Well, firstly, the combat. It is very easy to break. You just need to vacuum souls and pump up our leaf with soul steroids, who you can simply summon in every fight, and not just in boss fights. The game gives you the opportunity to farm billion souls without problems, and level up a character that will become an impenetrable tank, killing everything in its path. But the worst thing about this is not the broken combat. Not the overleveled characters who will look like your dick after the 5th masturbation in a row, and not even the same types of enemies who follow the same patterns, but the fact that the turn-based combat simply does not fit the Dark Souls series. If you ask the most seasoned players of the series, they will confidently give you the answer that Souls-like is a rhythmic genre. Press a button to make a step in the dance, then press another button to let the opponent make his step in the dance. Hit, dodge, and so on, until the end of times. Souls-like is interesting in that you can complete it with absolutely any weapon that you like, with absolutely any build that you can come up with. A wizard, a samurai, a brute with a club, a guy with 2 shields, an archer, a fist fight, anything, if you know the rhythmic essence of the game. But here, all the builds merge into one. Just make your numbers bigger than the enemy's numbers, especially speed. The thief and warrior can learn magic, the wizard can carry any weapon without pumping strength, summons are available to everyone and everything. There are no clearly defined builds in this game that would make the gameplay even a little interesting. I started as a thief who tanked bosses in the late game, while Leaf crushed everyone into blood mist with her AoE spells. And this tactic was used everywhere, both with bosses and with regular opponents. Nothing interesting, everything looked the same. It's like Tindering in China. The most viable strategy of Black Souls looks like this. Sell all the colored souls, not being racist here, except for speed. That one we use on ourselves to outspeed the bosses. And level up Leaf or any other companion that you prefer. Soon enough, they hit level 100, which is more than enough to annihilate any enemy. As soon as I learned about this quote-unquote loophole, this game turned into a monotonous button mashing, which in no way absolutely increased my cortisol level, like in Bloodborne or Elden Ring. Oh well, at least the content of this game is interesting, I consoled myself. And speaking of story... well, shit. The lore is so fucked up that my intellectual deficiency is not enough to fully comprehend the lore of Black Souls. I did, however, decide to take the Wechsler test to see what my intelligence score is. But I was, nonetheless, intellectually humiliated by this game, which begs the question, is it really just a shitty rpgmaker hentai game? Or there's something more to it? Why do people claim to be weeping and crying and letting their tears out in the sequel, claiming it to be peak fiction? The world may never know. Well, we will, when I will venture into the sequel review. But not now. Not today. Back when I started this game, I thought it would be a lot like Fear and Hunger. I mean, all the ingredients are there. Scary, deformed and sometimes sexualized enemies on your way, various bad endings, a plot that involved older gods. But you know, Fear and Hunger is just an excursion in various paraphilia, whereas Black Souls is a huge treatise into dark and grim world of Western fantasy and fairy tales. Because even if you take the original version of Grimm fairy tales, they were dark, and they were scary, just like this game. It just expands on that vision a lot more, allowing us to lift the veil on the most bloody and dark versions of fairy tales we all grew up with. I'm afraid to say it, but this weird Japanese porn game gets a lot of tropes right. But let's talk about the endings, as they are critical to understand the premise and the lore of this game. I did tell you this game has 24 endings, didn't I? Well, to be fair, only 4 of them matter. Only these 4 lift the veil of secrecy, a grand mystery that's hiding in plain sight. Marrying characters do not matter at all, because good endings, well, they become bad endings later. Example, Catherine the priest becomes a saint in her home country, and at first all is well, but one night your character wakes up to her words, Shub Nigurath, and the black goat of the woods with 1,000 young arrives. Another example, Dorothy at first becomes the most powerful witch, and then you and her lead an ordinary life. But one night, you again wake up to her screaming, and you see that something is tearing her from the inside out, filling everything with blood. And the bad endings of Leaf, oh boy, this only just the beginning. Like I said, marrying characters don't matter. You can't escape your fate. You can't escape your suffering. Let's talk about the endings that do matter. In ending A, you defeat Cinderella, rescue all 10 female heroines, and are shown having a grand old time at a tea party with all the friends you made. You drink tea, talk, be merry, but then everything falls dark. Silence. And then you're alone. There is nobody around you. You're all alone. There was nobody there in the first place. Your sanity is slipping. Your torture only began. In the next ending, again, you defeat Cinderella, traverse the white fog, and find yourself in a black void as time passes and the world goes back to normal. Peace comes onto the nation after Cinderella's defeat, and you, your character, are hailed as a hero. However, suddenly a voice speaks to you in the dark and calmly asks if this really was the end that you wanted to achieve. But wait, the signs were all there. This world exists because in this world fairy tales are real. But they can't be real, can they? Think about it for a second. Fairy tales can't be real, but your suffering is real. Who profits from this? There must be a mastermind behind this play. Wait, remember the game description I read in the beginning? Many other characters of famous tales will appear on the stage of tragedy. On the stage of tragedy. Stage. That means... Is this a play? A play. Who's behind it? Who orchestrated it? And how deep does it go? Since we're in the spoilers territory, I'll tell you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This world is a fake. Alice knew this. But who could have made it so? There's only one entity that's able to create worlds. It was Mary Sue, the creator of this world. You even found your statues dedicated to her, didn't you? In the beginning, there was nothing. This world did not exist. And we're getting meta here. There was an entity that took interest in our fairy tales from our actual world. Mary Sue began twisting and turning them to her own amusement because she initially found them very boring. This is how she created Lost Empire and Elysium, essentially an amusement park where your character suffers. Over time, Mary Sue lost control over you because of an outside influence, but that only exacerbated your suffering and sunk your sanity greatly. This whole world, its entire purpose is to make you mad and make you suffer. Why? Because Mary C is a malicious, fickle little bitch, and your character is the one she's holding dear, and you're important to her. This is Nameless One territory of suffering. This here is I have no mouth and I must scream levels of disturbing. Is there a way to break this vicious cycle? Yes, luckily, there is. But you're not going to like it. Why? Well, because you need to kill every heroine at Poseidon Hotel to bust out of grasp of Mary Sue to finally confront her. Yep, All the good friends you made along the way, you have to kill them with your own bare hands. Brutally, the way you're used to murder people, I might add. But I have to remind you something, this is all a dark play, none of these characters are real. They were all created by Mary Sue to be twisted and tortured by her until eternity breaks. Luckily, we're about to break it. You gain nothing out of this, only learning the truth, killing everyone in the process. Was it worth it? Tough to say, but I'm gonna go with yes. Mary Sue's obsession with twisting the fairy tales will lead to her downfall. You invoke Baphomet, her own mother, who is then escaping her confinement to the Holy Forest, which is destroyed in the process. And while Leaf, or rather Mary Sue, does manage to kill her mother in the process, she then loses her powers to another outside influence. Alice. Yes, that very Alice that summoned you in the first place. But she's dead. How can this be? Ah, young player, the answer to this will wait for you in the sequel. She strips Mary Sue out of her powers for good and imprisons her in her own castle. And as for you, well, who can tell? Only Black Souls 2 will be the judge of your actions. But for now, the book closes for Grimm, the Lord Creator. And that was Black Souls. It's like a puzzle where you must piece together the context for yourself, and nothing is ever as it seems. I think I can call it one of my favorite games I've ever played simply because of the story. Grimmification of fairy tales was a pleasant surprise for me, although sometimes it was a little too much for my taste. But nonetheless, the game delivered a lot more than what was promised on the tin. I will never forget its story, simply because it's so unique, and I played without hentai scenes, since I was never interested in that in the first place. I wasn't one of those come for hentai, stay for the story kind of people. Bitch, I am the story. I suffered the way the main character suffered. I went a mile in his shoes. I didn't let myself to be distracted from the truth of this world and this story, and after 4 endings, I am done with this game. And when I was done, I was clapping. Really clapping like in a theater. And then I laughed maniacally because I couldn't recount the last time I had seen something so fucked up and so beautiful at the same time. rpgmaker is a jagged pill to swallow, but I urge you, if you're going to take away one thing, one only thing from this channel, then let it be this one. Play this fucking game. Jesus, my hands were shaking when I finished it. You'll never get such a mighty dose of disgust, despair, loneliness, utter insanity, and suffering anywhere else. Nier can eat my motherfucking shorts. It's so far from all the competition that I can tell you this. The story of this game is subversive, raw, experimental, insane, and beautiful. I wasn't ready for this ride, honestly. But the writing of this exceeds the likes of my favorite games, and that should tell you something. I'm not saying the game is perfect. No game is. But it is perfect at what it tried to achieve, and that is to deliver a great story. I never thought that as a grown man I'd get to encounter those fairy tales from my childhood, but here I am, murdering away the Bremen musicians and Big Bad Wolf because the game is balls to the wall insane. It would be a mistake to ignore this game only because it's made in rpgmaker engine. I already showed you one other great game made in this engine. Even if it's not visually appealing, our imagination is deep enough to add all the necessary stuff to make this a ride you'll never forget. All that's left to say is that I never thought I'd get to end a never-ending nightmare when I first played this game. Again, I thought it was going to be a straightforward Fear and Hunger-like adventure with edgy content that has little meaning. Boy was I wrong. Despite the shitty combat, weird and janky music that's written by the psychopath, the game has enormous depth. That's why I called it the Mariana Trench of video games. It wasn't a joke, I meant it. So, if you have 15 hours to kill and a sanity to shatter, I can think of nothing better to do than to play Black Souls. Because get this, in some mysterious and twisted ways, the storytelling is streets ahead of Dark Souls. What starts as a mindless romp across the fairy tale land will end with a crisis of belief for you, dear viewer. This game reminds me a lot of Drakengard series, which was just as bleak, hopeless and grim. Similarities are striking. There's a genocide route, absolute despair, lots of gore, mentally ill characters, and it also has dragons. But I can't put my finger on the fact of why Japanese are so effective at evoking feelings of dread, complete isolation, sadness, hopelessness, and gloom. They are, to put it bluntly, masters of melancholy, and I don't want to joke about it either. All I want to do with the developer who goes by the nickname Eeny Miny Mo is hug him and tell him, thank you for doing this to me. Thank you for Black Souls. And as for me, I'm going to Alice.